You are here for Unit 2.1, Earth and Land Changing Shape, Unit Overview. My name is Janita Vasquez. I am the Program Manager for Elementary Development here at Open SciEd. And joining me today is Whitney Meals. And Whitney is a science educator from BSCS and the lead writer on this 2.1 unit. Also joining us today is Amelia Gottwals, who is our assessment lead for this project, Sarah Delaney from Open SciEd, and Erica Frazier from Open SciEd. You'll see some of them in the chat, adding documents, answering questions, those types of things. So again, we welcome you. We're so glad you're here with us today. And let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen in today's webinar. So we're going to tell you a little bit about Open SciEd Elementary. You may be familiar with our materials, but maybe you're not. So we're going to give you a little background about who we are. Then Whitney is here to help us experience part of this unit. She is going to take us through lesson 1, which is our anchoring phenomena lesson. And after that, Whitney is going to then help us walk through the full storyline for this unit. That means that we will look at every lesson from 1 to 10 and talk to you about that in a little bit more deeply. After that, Whitney is still going to stick with us and share some key features of the unit, things that she is really excited about and wants to share with you about this unit. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So talking about questions, sorry, you can use the chat to put any questions you have. We will try to answer as many of them as we can today. Okay, so a little bit about Open SciEd Elementary. So Open SciEd is a nonprofit organization, and we bring together amazing curriculum developers like Whitney and Amelia, state science administrators, teachers, and philanthropic organizations to help us develop free, high-quality science instructional materials and professional learning. We have 9 partner states who've been with us from the beginning of this work since middle school. And those amazing partner states have helped us recruit over 450 teachers to help us in this field test. Them, along with their 10,000 students, help to provide us tons of wonderful, insightful feedback to help us make these units more amazing than they are when we first set them out to field test. So we're so grateful for their participation. Now, a couple of things about elementary specifically. So first, if you're not familiar with our materials, we want to talk to you a little bit about our instructional model. We build our units using the storyline model, which focuses on engaging students in asking questions about phenomena, and then we use those questions that students have to drive the learning in the unit from beginning to end. Our lessons are all connected, and all the investigations and research that happens is in service of making sense of that phenomena that we talk about during our lesson 1. So here is what our instructional model looks like. And again, from beginning to end, we want to start with that anchoring phenomena, have some investigation lessons where students get to really ask some different questions, try some things out, do some research, all in service of answering that question for our unit phenomena. And we also put the pieces together, think about new questions that we want to answer as we get from beginning to end of the units. So we've designed our materials to be used in real elementary classrooms. We know that as elementary educators, you are teaching everything. You are doing all the things all day long. You might even be your own PE teacher, as I had to be sometimes. So While all our units have a recommended sequence, right? There's 4 in the year and we have a recommended sequence, but we know that that sequence may not work for you and your students. So our units are designed to be modular, to be used when you need them in different parts of the school year. And for second grade, and this is really for every grade, we have 4 units in every grade, and K2, each of those units has 10 lessons, and each of those lessons is 60 minutes. Now, we do not never expect you to have science for 60 whole minutes, okay, every day or every other day. Our units are built so while a lesson is meant to be 60 minutes, those 60 minutes can be broken up into 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week, depending on what works for you and your schedule. We also know that teaching science should not be a hardship. So these units only take about 4.5% of your full instructional minutes for the year. That is not a long time. So this is a great opportunity for you to incorporate science for your kiddos. Now, we are really proud of the integration work that we've done in these units. For math integration, the focus of our work is really thinking about math practices. And we also focus on using Math Talk and math modeling for students to make sense of data and to be able to share their explanations. For ELA, we have students engage with multiple types of texts, and they learn and communicate their scientific thinking in a variety of ways. That means you are going to see students communicating orally, in writing, using gestures, using drawings, using their home language. If they need to do that, we've done a great, really wonderful integration of literacy into all of these units. And our materials are meant to be hands-on. You know this. If you're familiar with our middle school and high school materials, you know this is something that we really believe in. Now we know everybody's wondering about where these materials are and when we can purchase them. We are currently working with kit providers and print providers to have contracts and things ready to go, hopefully by January of 2025. But if you decide that you do not want to purchase those materials kits, we also, in every one of our unit pages, provide you with a kit list that includes all the materials you need for the unit in case you want to purchase those on your own or your school wants to purchase those on their own. So that was all a little bit about Open SciEd, general things. Now I'm going to hand it off to Whitney, who is going to talk to us about this 2.1 unit. You ready, Whitney?
You bet. All right, so we've had the chance to think broadly more about our instructional model and some of the key features of that instructional model. And now we get to boil down to 2.1. So 2.1 is our Earth Land Changing Shape unit. And you can see we have 5 performance expectations we're building towards. Our first one up here is ESS 1.1, using information from several sources to provide evidence that Earth events can occur quickly or slowly, which I think you'll see as we go over our storyline later. Our second one is compare multiple solutions designed to slow or prevent wind or water from changing the shape of land. And then we have 3 engineering standards that we have here. The first one is ask questions, make observations, and gather information about a situation people want to change to define a simple problem that can be solved through the development of a new or improved object or tool. The second one here is develop a simple sketch, drawing, or physical model to illustrate how the shape of an object helps its function as needed to solve a given problem. And finally, number 5 here is analyze data from tests of 2 objects designed to solve the same problem to compare the strengths and weaknesses of how each performs. So this unit is doing a lot of work building towards those performance expectations. we're not just focused on our performance expectations. We know the NGSS is three-dimensional. So we also have our intentionally developed science and engineering practices in this unit. We have asking questions and defining problems, which we'll really get to dig into today. We have developing and using models, which you'll also see a little bit of, and finally, engaging in argument from evidence. Now, these are not the only science and engineering practices you'll see within the unit. These are just intentionally developed over the course of the unit. And then we have our cross-cutting concepts. So 3 cross-cutting concepts we have here are patterns, stability and change, and structure and function. Once more, these are not the only cross-cutting concepts you may see or feel as you're enacting this unit with your students. They're simply the ones that we really paid close attention to and intentionally developed across the course of the unit. All right. So with that, let's dig in. Get it? Dig or science. Anyway, this is Unit 2.1, Lesson 1. I'm going to ask us to engage as learners in this process. So if you can, I'm going to ask that you put your learner lenses on as we dig into this. So here we go. All right, everyone. Oh, hold on one second, Janita. I'm so sorry. Thank you. All right. So the other day, I know we were watching CNN 10 the other day, and like we were really into those news stories, but I went home and I watched the news. How many of you have ever seen the news before? Like maybe your parents have seen it, maybe it's been on like a YouTube short, maybe you've seen a little bit of on that like app that's like a tiki-talkie something. Yeah, some of us. So I really found this really cool article, or not article, really cool video that was talking about like some changes that were happening, and they were like happening in our community. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, how is this happening and what's going on? So I brought this video for us today, and hopefully we can watch this video and maybe we can figure it out together. How does that sound? All right, let's do it. All right, Yanira, would you mind playing that video for me, please? Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Sun. Reports are coming in about land moving without humans moving it. It seems like it's happening everywhere, from the cities to more rural areas. And it appears to be affecting everyone and everything who uses and lives on the land. We spoke with a firefighter who wanted to highlight this problem of the land changing.
Right now, we're doing a lot of construction. As you can see, the land over here is changing shape.
He noted some recent rain, but says,
We're not doing this. People aren't doing this. Animals aren't sneaking around doing this. We have cameras everywhere.
A farmer also reached out, worried about the land moving.
But I want you to know that our fields have been losing dirt for a long time. We have tried to prevent it by putting up trees to slow the wind down so our plants can grow. But the dirt keeps moving out of our field.
Even kids have noticed the mysterious changes. One second grader says moving wood chips has impacted the school's playground.
We went home from the weekends, and when we came back to school, the wood chips were scattered all over. They weren't under the swings anymore.
You can see the wood chips all over the sidewalk, but not under those swings. Because of safety concerns for students, the school says swing sets are now off limits until the problem is fixed. This issue clearly impacting people in their everyday lives. Even a scientist we spoke with said they are observing this phenomenon of land changing shape in all sorts of places.
This is happening around rivers and streams, along lakes, next to roads and sidewalks, and even in the desert. Something is causing the land to change everywhere, and in these cases, it is not people or animals.
Concerned viewers say they want to stop the land from moving, but first they are working to figure out how it's happening.
All right, that was really puzzling, right? So I would love to hear from you in the chat. What was that news story about? What did you take away from that? What was that about? And thank you all so much for participating in the chat today. It is a great way for us to share our ideas, community of learners. Okay, yeah, someone said, oh, it's like the land changing. Maybe there were landslides. Land is changing in a lot of places. It's like a mystery. How is the land moving? Yeah, people are wondering why this is happening. Oh, it's not animals either. Animals didn't do it. Oh, I love everything you're all putting in here. Thank you so much. Land's moving, but not because of people. Oh, there are such great ideas in chat. So it sounds like we learned a little bit about what the news story was about, and you even have some noticings in here. Some people said, oh, it's not just the dirt, it's also wood chips. If it's not people, who is doing this? Something keeps moving stuff. Did any of that you saw make us wonder anything? Do you have any questions now that you've seen this video? Did it make you wonder anything? You can go ahead and add that to chat too. Oh, I wonder if it's happening all over the world. Ooh, that is a great question. How is the land moving if people aren't moving it? Yeah, what is causing it? Oh my goodness, there are such great questions in the chat right now. I'm going to try and read some more of them, just capture them really fast. So I wonder if it rains there a lot. Is the same thing moving all of our different objects? Does this happen in other places? Is it caused by weather? What's causing the wood chips and the playground items to move? Oh, how quickly is it happening? Ooh, that's a great question too. Why are people sad? Yeah, why would that make people sad? I wonder if we put cameras to film whenever we're not there, if we would see anything. Oh, I love it. Oh, there are such great questions here. And it sounds like maybe we might have seen something like this before. Can we go to the next slide, Yanira? You've done a great job sharing your noticings and some of your wonderings, but have any of you ever seen anything like this before where the land has moved or changed shape around you? You can add that to chat too. Thank you all so much for participating so broadly in chat. Oh, Callie, you said yes in my garden. If we were here together, I would definitely want to ask you more questions about what you saw in your garden. Oh, your driveway gets muddy after a strong rainstorm? Ooh, Christina, I would love to hear more about that later. Oh, Natasha said, yeah, when the wind blows really fast. Ginny said her ditch is changing shape. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. The streets after it rains. So this is happening around us, is what you're saying. It's not just like on that video, but we're seeing it around us too. Oh my goodness. Huh. So we're seeing like land change shape. It seems like it's happening around us. I don't know how that's happening. What do you all think? How do you think that's happening? If land is changing on this video and land is changing around us, how do you think that land could have changed shape over time? I would love to hear your ideas. I mean, we were talking about ditches, we were talking about the side of the road and gardens. Yanira, would you flip to the next slide for me, please? I would love to hear some of your ideas. How could the land have changed shape, either in the video we just saw or even around us? How did that happen? What do you think? Oh, Jennifer said maybe water, wind, and weather. Ooh, erosion. Okay. I would love to hear more about like that garden, the side of the road, the ditch. What do you think actually happened right there for those things to move? Oh, big storms? But how? How could those things change the shape of our land over time? Ooh, I heard that somebody noticed that sand was blowing in the wind when they were at the beach, so maybe the wind is moving it. A lot of water might move those things. Oh, this is fascinating. We've got some ideas here. I wonder if we could stop and pause and record some of these ideas. Like maybe if I give you a piece of paper and you had the ability to like draw out what you thought was happening with your group, maybe we could come up with some really good ideas to share together. So, Yanira, I'm going to have you skip forward to slide 25, the first green one, if you don't mind. Thank you. And I want you to think just to yourself. I'm not going to help us draw anything, but think about what you would possibly draw if I were to give you this handout. What do you think you would draw in here to explain like what we saw around us and even in that video? Remember that video had that piece of land, that road, where all of that dirt seemed to be coming on that road. How do you think that land could have moved and changed shape and covered up that part of the road? Think about what you would draw, maybe what words you would add to that, but it can be drawings or words, however you want to represent this. Think about what you might add. We're not adding anything to the chat. It is just for you to think for a moment. All right, now that we have some stellar ideas, we would all get a chance to share together. So next slide for me, please. So we would have the opportunity to join in a scientist circle. So we would all get in a big circle if we weren't Zoom virtual here, and we would get a chance to share our ideas. We want everybody to have that front row seat so nobody is in front of or behind each other, because I know sometimes, I'm sure you all have seen it on this video recording, I am using my hands and I'm using gestures and maybe even some props occasionally to try and explain some of my ideas. So we want everybody to be able to be seen and heard as we're sharing all of our ideas. So we would all get together in a big circle and we would get a chance to share all of our ideas that we have on our papers. So through the magic of Zoom, we have 2 models that we have created as a class. Good job, guys. We'll skip one more forward. We have 2 different models here. I'm going to give you a second to look at them. And I think they might represent some of the ideas that we shared earlier. So take a moment. What ideas do you see represented in these pictures that seem to jive with some of your thinking here? Is there anything missing maybe? What ideas are present in our models here? You can go ahead and add some of your ideas to the chat. Thank you so much. Oh, it looks like we might have had the idea that wind might be blowing the dirt here. Fascinating. Okay. Ooh, and we even thought maybe about the direction of wind and water moving the land. Oh, yeah. I do see some arrows there. Like maybe we thought about like how that dirt moved from like the side of the road to onto the road, right? It's no longer this nice little clean shape on the side of the road. It's now like a blob on our road. Yeah. Yeah, some movement here. Maybe the water is moving. Doesn't look like we were certain about that one though, right? Like maybe some water is moving, maybe it's not. Maybe it's windy, maybe it's not. We have some question marks here because we aren't quite sure. Ooh, water picking up moving dirt. Maybe there's like a lower area. Yeah. Yeah, little breeze and big breeze. You know, it looks like maybe we weren't certain. Like, does it take a lot of wind? Does it take no wind? Is it the wind? We don't know. There's so many things on here. We have so many ideas, but it seems like we might have some questions about some of these things. You know, is there a lot of wind, a little wind? Does the wind move it? Is the water moving it? I don't know. Sounds like if we were all together, we would add these to our wonder chart because there are some really good questions here. Yeah. And I don't know. We have a lot of questions. Do you think maybe we should try and figure out the answers to some of these questions? I think we should. I think maybe we should investigate. So let's go to that next slide. So I just used a really big word here, and it was investigate. And it's some of the things we already want to do. We know we want to find the answers to our questions, so we can investigate. And investigate just means to look for answers. So I would love to think about how we might find the answers to our questions. So can we go to our next slide, please? Thank you. I would love some of your ideas in the chat because it sounds like we want to know, like, is water moving the land? Is this breeze moving the land? Does the amount of breeze matter? We have a lot of questions here. How could we figure out the answers to those questions? Now, I'm going to have you type something in the chat, but hold off on sharing it. We're going to do a waterfall here in a second. So whenever I press or whenever I say enter, you're going to go ahead and press enter, and we'll get to see all of our ideas for investigation at the same time. So put down in chat what you're thinking. How can we figure out how this shape of the land changed? How did all that dirt and soil that was off on the left side of our picture, how did that get over onto that road? How did it move in front of us in the examples that we had? How did it move in our garden? How did it move in our ditches? I love that I can see some of your faces and bodies moving. I can tell we're typing away, so I'm going to give us another about 10 seconds to add an idea to chat before we press enter. Ready? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and press enter. Oh my goodness, there's so many things in chat. All right. So we have so many ideas here. Oh my goodness. All right, so we could study the playground or the roads, maybe take pictures like before and after a rainstorm. We could totally go outside and check that out at some point. That sounds great. Oh, and there's this idea, like maybe we could like get some like dirt or sand in a box and like try and like blow it around and spray water on it, see if it moves. That's a great idea. We could probably do that one too. That sounds very feasible. Oh, that's pretty cool. Ooh, use a fan of different speeds and see how it moves the land. Ooh, I love this idea of like using wind like in our classroom to try and move things. Ooh, take pictures of the same place on different days, see what changes. Oh, that's cool. I bet we could find some of those pictures. Oh, look at the area, take pictures at different intervals of time. I love it. Ooh, Adriana has some questions about forces and friction or little friction. Ooh, I want to hear more about friction later. We're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. I want to know what you mean by that, but we'll do that later. Jenny said, oh, use dirt and sand, add wind, see if they move. Yeah, I think we could definitely try some of these things out. It sounds like maybe we want to like look at our communities and see what's here. Maybe we want to like try and move some of this with wind and water ourselves. I think we can do those things. What do you guys think? I think so too. But we were also talking about this happening around us. Is this actually happening around us? Like we had mentioned like the soil in the garden, all that. Do you think it's happening in other places too? Okay, let's go to that next slide. So maybe it is happening like more than we think around us. So what could we look at to see if this is happening around us? Who could we ask? And you can type some of your ideas into chat. What can we look at? Could we ask someone about this? Is there anybody that we might know like if things are moving around us? Ooh, okay, so we might ask our parents. Okay. I think we could definitely ask like our parents, our neighbors. Oh yeah, we could like go out and check things out ourselves. Yeah, maybe we like go home and we find a trusted adult and we could like walk around and see if we could find examples of where land seems to have moved. Oh my goodness, maybe you could like even send in pictures to me or like stories and we can like share them as a class and we can investigate them together and see how this is working in our community. Ooh, talk to farmers. I love all these ideas. I think we can totally do them. So tonight, whenever you all go home, I'm going to send you home with a piece of paper. So on the next slide, you're going to see an example of this. Now, this is meant for your parents so they can see like what we're doing and all the different ways you can share. But I want you to go home and ask those people, do we have any examples of land moving around us? Can you share it with me? Or can we just go on a walk and take some pictures? Or can I just go outside and draw like what I see around us? So I would love to see what you come back with next time. And it sounds like we probably even need to do some investigations next time to see if we can even get things to move with wind and water. So that's what we'll do. Sound good? Let's do it. All right. That's lesson 1. So thank you so much for engaging as learners in that experience. You all shared some fabulous ideas. I love the participation in chat. I really appreciate that. So thank you all so much. Okay.
Whitney. All right. I am wondering if there are any questions about this anchoring phenomena or the content in this first lesson. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will answer those. And it's okay if you don't have questions right now, but we'll have another chance to ask some questions in a bit. Whitney, I was wondering about the models of the land.
Mhm.
Are those ones that actually are shown to students, or were those just for us today?
That was for the TV magic of Zoom. I knew that we wouldn't have a chance to construct an initial model together, and I knew we all wouldn't be able to like share our models. So we did abbreviated version today, where I showed you 2 examples that we had created with some students. So we were able to see like what you might actually see in a classroom. And what's great is there's even a TREF, teacher reference page in lesson 1 where you can look at that and see like, here are some different ideas that might come out of your class. And just know it's okay if those ideas don't come out. This is just an initial little assessment that we're using for our students to see what ideas they're coming in with and what they're thinking. So those models can look any way your class wants them to look. Those are just the 2 that we happen to have samples of.
Great. Thank you, Whitney. So Callie has a question in the chat. A common misconception is in this topic is that these changes are caused by earthquakes. Is that incorporated into this unit?
Ooh, that's a great question. So earthquakes are not really incorporated within this unit. Performance expectation is based around wind and water. So we really tried to focus on these smaller areas in which we could clearly tell like it was just this area that moved in order to create like that isolated event. So we can then look a little bit deeper into that. But it really doesn't cover earthquakes because we don't really have that within our performance expectations. Amelia, would you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to add that as part of our development process, we test this out in real classrooms across the country. So Janita mentioned those numbers, and that is such an important, critical part of our development process because it allows us to see like, wow, this came up a lot. We need to help bend the storyline or attend to it. And I think in this particular situation, because of the anchor, it may be that misconception didn't show up, but you are an expert educator. And so I'm sure that you will attend to it as you need to with your students if it does come up, but it didn't come up in our field test data.
Yeah, I agree with what you both said. And even if it did come up, I think that that's something that could remain on the wondering chart that we're like, we wonder if this could be an earthquake, but over the course of these lessons, they're going to figure out what actually does cause this. And then I believe that they cover earthquakes in the 3rd through 5th grade band. So they do get a chance to think about that later on.
Another question in the chat, Whitney, is, was this what we just experienced, what would happen over 60 minutes?
Yes, that was over a 60-minute period. We did some abbreviated work because we only spent about 15 minutes doing that as a class on Zoom. But students would have the opportunity within that time to watch that video twice to get more observations about what might have caused the land to change shape and really think about like the stories that were shared. One really cool one to pull in is the firefighter because he's like, it's not people, it's not animals. We have cameras up. And it helps us kind of narrow into something is happening here and it's not because of those. We also have the ability to have students draw us models in groups, and then they'll be able to bring those to the scientist circle to then share, and we develop our larger model off of that. So what we experienced was the abbreviated version, but the whole thing would have been a 60-minute class period. And there are several components that you saw. You saw the different colors of slides. Those are really great ways to break up the lesson as you're thinking about your instructional time that you have. So you might have done just the blue slides one day. Maybe you come back and you do the green ones another.
All right, thank you, Whitney, and thanks everyone for the questions. Okay, so now let's dig into that storyline.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so our storyline is 10 lessons. We just have the ability to experience a very abbreviated version of lesson 1 here. You all shared some great observations about how land might have changed shape in these 2 different pictures in the videos and all around us. We created a model. And at the end of this lesson, we were really curious as to if this is happening around us and if we could find an example of that. So you all would have went home and found some really cool examples. And we even said we needed to do some investigations in class together to see if we could get wind and water to move this land. So as we go into lesson 2, we're really curious about that. Can we actually use wind and water to change the shape of land? So we're going to have to start thinking about that and start setting up for that. So in lesson 2, we all get to come back together and we share some amazing examples of wind and water possibly changing the shape of land. And you'll notice we have a not sure column over there because I don't know that some of these. I don't know. Maybe it was wind, maybe it was water. We're going to have to figure out more about this in order to determine how land might be moving in our community. So okay, we don't know how this is happening, but we said we wanted to actually try and move this in our classrooms. So I have these bins over here and we could fill up the bins to match some of the areas around us. So we construct some bins, we fill some up with sand, we put some with dirt and rocks because it seems like some of our soil is dirt and rocky. So we try and replicate what's around us. And then we get all set up for that. And that's pretty much our class period because we know that takes a lot of time to really think about how we might set up these bins to look like the environment around us. So lesson 2 is all about us constructing this model that we can then test. But we know we haven't tested it yet. And I want to know what happens whenever we blow on this and whenever we spray water on it. So we're going to have to do that next lesson, right? So lesson 3 is about us trying it out. So in lesson 3, we actually get to use these cool bins that we've developed that have this road on it that's like that environment that we saw in that video and side of the road. And we're trying to get it to move over onto that road like we had seen in the video and around us in our everyday lives. So we take a spray bottle and we're spraying and we see, oh my goodness, that is actually moving some of that stuff over there, but maybe not all the rocks. And it seems like if we take a straw and we blow very gently, we blow a lot, we sometimes see some of that land moving too. So it does seem like wind and water might be able to change the shape of some land, but this is just in a bin. It's not outside. It's not the pictures that we have up here of our community or what's in our schoolyard. So we're still not sold that this can actually happen around us. And even though we got to read this really cool book about land changing shape in different places, we saw it happen in different places over there too, but I want to know if it's happening around me. So we need to go out in our schoolyard and figure that out. So guys, let's pack up our spray bottles. Let's pack up those straws. Let's go figure this out. So in lesson 4, we're going to do just that. We are going to go see if wind and water move that land around our school. So we all get together, we get in groups, we get to try that out. We test different types of land, maybe there's some rocks, maybe there's some soil. We might make some noticings based on our environment, maybe we can get some rocks to move, maybe some others won't. In fact, it seems like a lot of rocks just don't move. And maybe we had grass and it seemed like the land that was under grass was a lot harder to move than the grass that wasn't. But I still am having this issue where it was we saw some rocks and stuff moved and we saw some wood chips, all that. And it doesn't seem like my spray bottle and our straws can really get them to move. So I'm okay, I think wind and water can move a lot of things, but I'm still not certain here. Can it actually move rocks? And I mean, we need to figure that out, don't we? So in lesson 5, we need to think about like if rocks can move and change shape over time. So we're like, yeah, I think like rocks can move and like change shape over time, but like I need to like get some rocks and like try it out. So we build a new bin with some rocks in it, and we really try to get at it, where we're spraying it with a little water, and this time a lot of water, and we got some wind and a lot of wind. We're like, okay, so it seems like it can, but like maybe it just takes time. So we get to set up this investigation where we have a rock. We let water drip over it for a long time. And by a long time in 2nd grade, we mean 10 to 15 minutes. And magically, not magically, we know not magically, through the power of science, we see this rock start to change shape. So even though it didn't start changing shape when the water first started dripping over it, we see like, oh, maybe rocks do change. It just takes a longer amount of time. Which gets us thinking about rocks in other places, rocks of other size and locations. So in lesson 6, we're like, oh, is this happening in other places? And can we use our ideas to explain some of the changes around us? So we start looking at a book, and this book talks about different changes that this class saw on a field trip. We start trying to explain how these changes might have happened, kind of like, you know, a little bit of practice before we do an assessment together. And we start talking about how this creek seemed to have moved this section of land over here. And we break it down as a class and we figure that out. How cool is that? And then we're like, you know what? I think we're ready to try and explain this on our own. So we get to take an assessment where we have pictures, and we cut out a picture and we put it on a piece of paper and we explain how that change happened and if it was fast or slow. And at that point, we're like, okay, so I think we've learned a lot. We've explained that like wind and water can change the shape of land. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it happens slowly. And it's all based upon like how this land is interacting with that wind and water, which is really cool. But like, we have that big chart over there on our wall where we have all those community examples, and we've been talking about how this might be a problem for a few lessons now. I think we might want to solve some of our problems. So in lesson 7, we're going to get a chance to think about the community examples around us and how we might begin to solve them. So in lesson 7, we get to look at all of our examples. And if we don't have examples of that, maybe there's a teacher reference that also has some examples you can pull from. And we pick a problem that we want to solve. So we do a lot of work because 2nd graders, we know, like we've got to negotiate a lot of that. And we develop a land change bin, a bin that looks like the problem area. So that way we can start figuring out how to solve that in our classrooms. So this entire lesson is us picking a problem to solve and creating an area in our bins that looks like that area itself, so we can test out our ideas later. So we, you know, really think about how we could build that. And then in lesson 8, we start thinking about how we might solve that problem. So we read about some existing problems we have with these really cool or existing solutions that are already out there with these infographics. You know, we had found outside that maybe there was like this thing with plants that might be helpful. We also saw some like fences or maybe some windbreakers in our communities that we can bring in and talk about. And we start thinking about how we might make a solution that's kind of like an existing solution, but like works for our specific problem. So we start drawing that up and we get some materials and we think about how we could use those materials. And now we are totally ready to like build a solution and try it out. So in lesson 9, we're going to do that. So in lesson 9, we build our solution and we test it, which testing does not take too long because it is spraying a spray bottle and blowing on it with a straw, which we have done in many lessons before this. And we record our observations, and then we come together as a class. And we start looking at the different shapes of things that we've used and how it affects like how that land moved. So we're really thinking about the structure and its function here. So we build our models, we test them, we start comparing them. And then in lesson 10, we're like, hey, we have a bunch of shapes, we had a bunch of things. It seems like there might be some things in common with these designs that worked really well. Let's look at those together. And we find out like, hey, it seems like we always want something with a flat bottom. Or if it's going into the soil, it needs to have a lot of pieces to it, kind of like roots. And we figure out different design solutions have different parts that work in certain ways that help it be effective. So we really think about what we might want to do if we were to build like a really great solution that incorporated several of our ideas. And we finally get to take a little assessment where we pick a solution that we like out of our classmates' solutions. And we talk about like why we think it was really effective at solving that problem and how that shape helped it do that. And then at the very end, we have this amazing book where we get to look at people who do this as a career. So they're solution scientists, and we get to learn about how they solve problems every day and how this could be something that we do whenever we graduate. So how cool is that? All right, and that is our storyline. There's also like options for extension with this. If you wanted to actually create that solution in your community, propose it to your principal or your school board or add it to your community garden, that's totally on the board. You can take these solutions and do what you want with them. So it leaves a lot for you to use your imagination with if you choose to actually develop these solutions. So a really fun community involvement project.
Thank you, Whitney. All right, before we move on to key features, there is one question. Is there something besides rock salt that we can use in that lesson where we have the water running?
So if we're trying to show just wind and water changing the shape of the land, rock salt is something that allows us to see it within a manageable class period. There are some other soft rocks out there. I personally like the rock salt because it is something that you can touch, you can manage, and it's a little bit safer to have in the classroom than some of the other softer rocks. You definitely need to look up the type of rock you're using and make sure it's safe to touch, especially for those little bodies that touch things and then their hands go in their mouths unintentionally. So I would say it was rock salt's probably the best option that we've found at this point. But there might be other ones out there, but it's just really thinking about what we can either blow air on or put water on to change the shape of that rock. And rock salt seems to be the most malleable in that sense.
Thanks, Whitney. Okay, there is a question about lesson 4, so I'm going to backtrack.
Okay.
About the article, the newspaper article. Was that a literacy article? How was that used?
Yes, it is. It gives us a window to the world outside of our classroom. It allows us to see how communities also have the same problems that we do and how some solutions are being developed for those, which is a nice little foreshadowing moment and gets students to think about different ways in which these solutions could happen, outside of their classroom and even in their communities. So it gets us kind of thinking in the back of our heads about solutions, especially whenever we look at our community examples chart again. So yeah, it's a great article.
All right, someone says that sandstone might be a substitution for the rock salt, but then it would be more about the wind because you'd have to shake it in a bottle or something to that effect. Okay. And there's another question. There's a couple of other questions that I think we'll wait until the very end, Whitney.
Okay, that sounds
so
great.
Whitney gets to share some of these key features, some things she really loves about these units with us.
So one of the great things about this unit is it was developed with classroom teachers on the writing team, and we were really intentional about thinking about wall space, timing, and all of that as we revised this unit. So one thing that I would just like to call out that I feel is a really great feature of this unit are some teacher supports that exist. I know whenever I'm trying to plan for a unit or I'm going through and trying to look at the lessons, I want to know what's coming. And I get a little bit of anxiety, honestly, if there's something that doesn't tell me what's going to happen and what needs to be prepped in advance for all 10 of those lessons. So we have some resources that do just that. We have a unit class chart page that talks about the different charts that will span across lessons. So I can think about how I might plan that out for my space and my students. We also have a planning for future lessons document that talks about what we need to plan for and if there's any advanced prep involved with that. So that way I'm not getting to school the day before I teach this lesson and looking at it and saying, okay, what do I need to have? Oh, I should have grown grass like 2 weeks ago. Oh no, it helps me think through that a little bit in advance. So that way I know what to expect and I can have those things done at the beginning of the unit instead of waiting towards the end. We also thought a lot about, if there aren't a lot of community examples shared, we have a ton of examples that were sourced from across the US, from different developers and writers and teachers that could be used on the community examples chart that might mirror a situation in your community. So that way there's resources there if those things do not come into your classroom from students. And for every lesson where it was possible, we have example charts that are already made and slides. So if you are using any type of, electronic smartboard or anything like that, there is the option of just using those. So you don't have to use your wall space for that. But in the unit class charts document, we did talk about which ones you might want to do on physical paper versus electronically, but hopefully that reduces some of that prep and supports you in teaching the unit. And we also have one other thing that I feel pretty passionate about for this unit, and it's the community connections. As you noticed in lesson 1, we hit it hard. We start sharing right away different ways that land might be changing around us. We made sure to incorporate many different ways that students could share those as well as their families. And you'll notice even in lesson 1, we've made red anything that needs to be changed before it goes home. You'll notice we have teacher, please fill in this information here about how you would like the trusted adult to share video with your classroom in case it is something where they have videos or photos or stories to share. The chart is developed over several lessons, revisited over several lessons. So it really gives a chance for us to think about how this is playing out around us and how it's a big problem around us and how we can solve some of those problems. So we see that with the problems and the solutions towards the end, lessons 7 through 10, we actually get to bring in any community solutions that we find and add those to the chart as well. So there are just lots of opportunities to bring the community into our classroom with this unit, and we tried to flag that in a lot of our lessons.
Great. All right. So there is some questions in the chat already. So I'm going to go through and ask some of those. If your calendar can't accommodate the full unit due to the number of lessons, is there a minimum of suggested lessons?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I will call out that lessons 1 through 6 are focused more on the earth and space performance expectations. And then lessons 7 through 10 are incorporating the earth and space with our engineering performance expectations. So if you absolutely had to break it somewhere, I think lesson 6 might be a good place to break that. But your students won't get to develop any solutions for the problems that they find in their communities. So there are trade-offs with not doing the full sequence itself, but we do have 2 separate lesson sets because there is a natural breakout lesson 6.
Okay, thank you. And also our materials are open educational resources. So if you've downloaded the unit, you can see that they are Google Docs. So if you are downloading materials and there are changes and modifications that you must make, our materials allow you to do that. As the classroom teacher, we know that your context is just It's just different. I'm in New Mexico. You might be in Minnesota. What is happening outside is very different. So if you need to make modifications, you can do that because again, our materials are meant to be used that way. We've done our best work in writing these units, but we understand that you are all professionals and you may need to make modifications and add in resources or things like that as you're going through.
And just one more
Oh yes, go
addition.
ahead, Amelia.
Oh, sorry, just one more addition is that all of our units have what we call front matter. And there's a section in our unit front matter that says, how might I shorten or condense this unit if needed? And so it could be exactly what Whitney was saying, that you do just the first lesson set, or there are some recommendations in there. We don't recommend them, but if you have to do it, that like where you might be able to shorten components of the lesson. So teachers could use that as guidance as well.
A different question, and Amelia answered it, so I'll read her response, but then maybe you want to add something, Whitney. Are there multiple reading levels available for the article? And Amelia was great and let us know that all of the readings in the unit are designed to be interactive read alouds. And in later grades, there are readings at those grade levels. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I would agree with all of that. What's really neat about this unit, though, is we also have an infographic of design solutions. So there is something that does go in front of students and they get to look at it while the teacher reads about those design solutions. So they're able to have something right in front of them and think about the structure and the function of those designs. So this unit has a lot of really cool literacy features built in.
Mm-hmm. I will also add that for anything that is meant to be an interactive read aloud, we've designed it to be about 2 grade levels above what your students are. So this will pop, most of the readings are about a 4th grade level. So they are definitely not meant for your kiddos to do that. They're meant to be read alouds. Now, when we have materials that are specifically for students, then those are written at a student grade level. And again, because it's an open resource, you can make changes to those if you feel you need to. Okay, another question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the assessments?
Amelia, do you want to take that one?
I can try, and Whitney, of course, knows this unit the best of anybody. We in Open SciEd Elementary have a coherent assessment system that includes opportunities for embedded assessment mostly. So our pre-assessment is really the entire first lesson that Whitney exposed you to. That's all opportunities for teachers to elicit students' incoming ideas and experiences and use those to shape the rest of the lesson, as Whitney so wonderfully pointed out. We have opportunities for ongoing formative assessment where we support teachers in looking and listening for student sense making with prompts and also looking for things, not just like what students write or say, but also the gestures they use to make sense of what's happening. So especially in a unit like this, where we might be moving our hands a lot to show how water and wind are moving, you can learn a lot about what kiddos are thinking and their sense making from that. We also have key moments in the unit and where we have like a place to kind of take stock. Where are we? And we provide guidance for teachers for how to make sense of what children have written and what they have been saying and doing across lessons. We provide what we call following student sense making for teachers to be keeping track of how students are making sense over time, because a lot of this doesn't happen within a single lesson. And then there are summative assessment moments where we provide rubrics and examples of student work at different levels for teachers to then kind of have that summative evaluation of how much students have learned. But we also think that most of our assessments are meant to be formative in some nature, and that we're not, that we can always go back and be supportive of our students. I'm not sure if that answers the question about all the assessments, but that's a big overview.
Thank you, Amelia. All right. Okay. Whitney, can you give us some examples of problems students might identify to solve in their communities?
Yeah, definitely. So we had a couple students that said things like, oh, the like just spot over here outside of our, classroom, like we can see it on the sidewalk. Somehow the dirt's getting all washed over there whenever it rains. We also had things like the community garden show up, like all of our dirt's washing out of the garden. So what can we do about that? We also had the wood chips. The wood chips was an actual thing. That's why it made it into the video, because that was observed by one of the students. So the wood chips blowing out of the box, that's another example. Just some very smaller examples or things that we had run across. It doesn't mean that you won't come across a larger example that students want to solve for. But there are plenty just around the school that students are able to find generally. Whenever you're just looking to see if land has moved around you, it's amazing how many things you notice, and how many things you can take pictures of and share.
Right, thank you. And this is a great question by Becky. Is there any thought to differentiating between changes to land that are a result of things caused by people, like stream or rivers that have been dammed, etc.?
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into that. So whenever you're looking at the community examples chart, whenever they're sharing things, we've actually created an option to add another column. It's not on the physical chart that you're going to see in the materials itself. It's in a teacher reference document that talks a little bit more about it. But we do recognize that they're going to find things that are changed from either humans changing it or human intervention leading to that change. And we don't want to neglect those things. So there is some guidance provided on how to handle whenever those do come in the classroom. Different ways that you can talk about it and share those ideas.
But just so everyone knows, that's not really meant to be the learning at this grade level. So those types of things are happening in later units. So I know the 5.3 unit will work with some of those things. I think there's a 4th grade unit that addresses some of those pieces that have to do with man-made changes that are really great and wonderful, but are tied to performance expectations in those grade levels and pieces. But if you're looking for this specific webinar, in about a week, it will be in the unit page for this unit. So every one of the units has student videos, if there are any, teacher videos, if there are any, and the webinar recording is also there on the unit page. So you can always find Whitney there forever and ever. So we thank everyone for being